people, welcome to another episode of the Immigration Guide. This is your girl Michelle. Today we'll be talking about temporary residents of Canada. Who are those who make up temporary residents of Canada? What is the percentage? How does it affect you? Because a lot of people are worried if they should relocate to Canada or should they still pursue their dreams in coming to Canada? Yes, of course you should. If you want to come to Canada, still pursue that dream. Before I get started, if you're not following us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it to people out there because this information is going to be very helpful to them. And thank you all for those who have subscribed. Don't forget to hit the notification button so that each time we upload the content, you'll be the first to know. Thank you all. So let's get started. Who are temporary residents of Canada? Temporary residents of Canada are simply people who are in Canada for a particular period of time. Temporary residents of Canada, if you fall under categories like if you're in Canada as a student, if you're in Canada as a worker, if you're in Canada as a visitor, you all form the temporary resident population in Canada. So anybody that is in Canada with a permit, it means you're a temporary resident in Canada. Okay? So from our analysis, we see that 6.2% of the Canadian population are temporary residents. Okay, so 6.2% of the residents. So the government of Canada is trying to put in place some policies to reduce the population of temporary residents in Canada. That is why there's been a lot of changes regarding the immigration to Canada. So please stay tuned for latest updates on immigration to Canada. Let's start. So there was a policy that was put in place for employers who were looking to hire workers out of Canada, where there's gonna be a reduction in the workforce from 30% to 20%. That means that the number of workers that will be coming out of Canada is going to reduce from 30% to 20%. So they have to look for people in Canada who can fill those jobs, taking people out of Canada. So they've reduced it from 30% to 20%. There's also another policy that has been put in place regarding the labor market impact assessment, which is called the LMIA. A lot of people don't know what LMIA is. LMIA is simply a program that the government of Canada has authorized employers to hire people or skilled workers from out of Canada, okay, to come to Canada and work. That is what LMIA is. So they have reduced the LMIA criteria from 12 months to 6 months, except the employer is participating in a recognized employer pathway program. Okay, so now LMIA is, instead of it being 12 months, because it used to be a 12 months period. So it's 12 months. That means minimum of 12 months and above. So you can have a contract to come and work in Canada for 2 years, for 1 year. Now they have brought that 12 months to 6 months. So now you can come to Canada to work in Canada with an LMIA for only 6 months rather than 12 months. But now you can still get the 2 years period. Okay? Now, unless this employer is participating on employer pilot program, there are a lot of pilot programs in Canada that people are not aware. And I will state them. We have the healthcare pilot program. If you're in the healthcare field, you can apply for the healthcare pilot program. If you're in agriculture, you can apply for the agri pilot program. Now we have 2 other pilot programs that have been put in place by the immigration minister, which is the rural communities pilot and the French communities pilot. These are pilot programs that will give you permanent residence in Canada as a temporary residence. So these programs are also important for you to know to see if you can leave from a temporary residence to a permanent residence. So, with this new policy that has been put in place for the labor impact assessment from 12 months to 6 months, unless the employer is under the pilot program, then they can still maintain the 12-month contract. Okay, I would like to, break down this 6.2% of the population for us to know which area is more dominant in Canada. For the 6.2% of the temporary resident population, we have 42% of that population are international students. That's to tell you that international students in Canada make up the population. Like I was saying, regarding 42% of international students make up the temporary residents population in Canada. We have 4% of spouse of international students. So we know that as an international student, you can bring your spouse to work in Canada while you go to school. But currently, there's been a law that has been passed regarding international students bringing their spouses. So if you're enrolled in a post secondary program in Canada and you are studying in a post secondary school, you can no longer bring your spouse to come and work in Canada because that policy has been changed. Okay, so the only people who can bring their spouses to work in Canada are people who are enrolled in a master's program or a PhD program. So if you're enrolled in a master's or a PhD program, you can bring your spouse to work in Canada with an open work permit. Now, there's a specification to those who are enrolled in a bachelor's program. There's an exemption of those people who can bring their spouses to Canada. If you're enrolled in a bachelor's of education, bachelor's of nursing, you can still bring your spouse to work in Canada. But if you're enrolled in a post secondary school, like a diploma and some other bachelor's program, you no longer qualify to bring your spouse to work in Canada. We have 11.4% of postgraduate work permit holders who occupy the 6.2% of the temporary residents in Canada. What is postgraduate work permit? A postgraduate work permit is a permit that is issued to students who complete. Most of the times we come to Canada as students because we want to acquire knowledge as well as become permanent residents of Canada. So the pathway for you to become a permanent resident in Canada, the first step is for you to finish your studies and apply for the postgraduate work permit to work in Canada. So postgraduate work permits are only for international students. And now, as an international student who is working, can bring your spouse to work in Canada. Okay? So we have 9% of the temporary resident foreign workers. These are people who come to Canada to work under the skilled trade program, closed pathways. So with this program, 9% of the temporary foreign workers make up the 6.2% of the temporary resident population in Canada. We have the 5.3% of spouse of skilled workers. The spouse of skilled workers, that means you that are under a closed work permit, who is working for a particular employer, you can bring your spouse to work under an open work permit. Okay, so your spouse can be in Canada as well with you while they are on an open work permit. You are under a closed work permit. So 5.3% of the spouse of skilled workers make up the temporary resident population in Canada. Also, we have the 15.8% of special pathways. For example, we have what they call the International Experience Canada. This is a program that is for those who are in Europe. If you have a European nationality, you can come to Canada to work for a period of 2 years with an open work permit for any employer in Canada. So this population makes 15.8% of the temporary resident population in Canada. Also, we have 7.5% of the ICT and trade agreement. That means the 7.5% are workers who work under information technology, that is IT. So currently we have new pathways to come to Canada as an IT tech or as an information computer technician. So, and also we have the trade agreement. What is trade? Trade is simply people who do jobs on hands on. For example, we have truck drivers, welders, and plumbers. So these people can come to Canada and work with a temporary permit. Okay, so 7.5% of the ICT and trade agreement makes up the 6.2% of the temporary resident population. And lastly, we have 5%, which is the asylum seekers within Canada. So those who are in Canada who have submitted their asylum cases and haven't gotten a hearing yet. Most of them have work permits that permits them to work in Canada while waiting for their hearing. These people make 5% of the asylum of the temporary residence population in Canada. So this is the breakdown of how the 6.2% of population in Canada is been formed. And we see here that 42% of the population is international student. So international student is a main core to the Canadian economy. So with all these policies put in place to reduce temporary residents in Canada, this is going to help temporary residents who are in Canada because they're going to focus more on creating pathways on how temporary residents in Canada can get permanent residence in Canada. So this is going to be advantageous to people who are already in Canada. Okay. So on January 22nd, we know IRCC announced several major changes regarding international student program. One of those one of those policies were that one of them was graduate of college programs. A graduate of a college program with a public-private curriculum license agreement will no longer be eligible for a postgraduate work permit as of September 1st. This was one of the policies that were put in place. So there are some schools, some postgraduate schools or graduate colleges that will not be able to give you a postgraduate work permit. That is why I tell people before you come to Canada as a student, make sure that the school you apply to, will issue you a postgraduate work permit after your studies because it's very important as an international student. If your school cannot issue you a postgraduate work permit, that means you just wasted those years and your money. Then you will now have to look for another school to apply to get admission and complete the program before you will qualify for a postgraduate work permit because as a student you cannot have a postgraduate work permit if that school will not be able to give, they'll reject it from you. So make sure that when you're applying to study in Canada, whichever school you're applying to, you make sure that school will give you a postgraduate work permit. All of those information are on the RSCC website. Secondly, the policy was changed. They said on September 1st, but now, as of March 22nd, this policy was amended. The date was changed to May 15, 2024. This means international students in one of these programs who graduate after this date are no longer eligible. That means if you were enrolled in this school and you're graduating after May, you cannot qualify. That means if you're graduating this summer, you will not qualify for a postgraduate work permit. So what you need to do is to hurriedly apply for a new school so that you will not go out of status. It's very important for you to note this. So if you are enrolled in any of this program, go to the RSCC website and see if your school is one of the schools that will no longer issue a postgraduate work permit. Secondly, the main changes to international students is they've added what they call the provincial attestation letter. Every student now needs a provincial attestation letter to apply for their study permit. Okay? So, if you applied for your visa in January, before January 22nd, you don't need a provincial attestation letter, which is called the PAL. But if you applied after January 22nd, then you need to contact the school and the province where you are located to issue you that attestation letter. Okay? When you take that attestation letter, make sure you send it to IRCC. Even if your application is in process, send that information to them through the web form so that they should receive it, because most decisions will be made with the attestation letters. So, to keep you on the safe side, if you've applied after January, make sure you apply for your attestation letters. There are a lot of provinces now that are issuing attestation letters. We have Saskatchewan, we have Manitoba, we have Alberta, we have New Brunswick, we have Newfoundland, we have Quebec, and we have British Columbia. We are still waiting for the province of Ontario and other provinces to tell us how they will be issuing these attestation letters. But from what I've gotten is Ontario are targeting healthcare, STEM, IT, and trade. So these are the four major sections that they are targeting to issue an attestation letter. So we are still waiting for them to give us the date and how this attestation letter will be issued. So if you're applying for a school in Canada, make sure that you've done your findings about the school and the program and the province in which you're applying for, because now provinces have changed their policies regarding international students. So please, 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 as an international student, pay attention to this thing. You need an attestation letter, which is called provincial attestation letter from your school. Make sure you have that. And make sure you verify if the school will be able to give you a postgraduate work permit. So this is the information that I brought in today for us to discuss about, to kind of give you highlights on how this policies is going to affect the temporary residence population in Canada. And I hope this information helps you out there. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We'll be there to help you. And please, please subscribe, like, and share, because this information is going to help someone out there. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so that each time we upload the content, you'll be the first to be notified. Thank you and have a great day. Stay blessed.